floor to the Honourable Lenora Qereqeretabua. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As the nation waited with bated breath last night for the delivery of the revised budget, many Fijians waited without having had a decent meal. Many Fijians waited without water in our taps, and many still do tonight. Many Fijians waited while not being able to afford a decent home, a decent roof over their heads. Many Fijians waited wondering what their children would eat for lunch today. The majority of the Fijian people today, Mr. Speaker, are tired of waiting. So last night, the least the government could have done was to have some decency and show up on time. Waiting, waiting, waiting. This is the legacy of the Fiji First government. Promises made so eloquently, so vigorously, so loudly are meant to be kept. The greatest test of any budget is getting things done. Unfortunately, the government has shown us time and time again that behind all the puffery and the chest beating and the long-winded speeches is a chronic inability to get things done right. The budget reflects the government's character of being strung along by short-term gains rather than long-term vision. Our economy was already slowing before COVID ever existed. Growth was slumping, wages were stagnant, productivity was declining, investment was slowing, and debt was rising. And yet, Mr. Speaker, the government had the temerity to try and convince us all that everything was okay, that times had never been better, and the promises just kept coming. We are still waiting for Waila City. We are still waiting for the Lautoka Olympic swimming pool. We are still waiting for the Wunindao Sporting Complex, the grounds for which was graded and has now turned into a lovely grazing paddock for the bullocks, the cows, and the horses in Wunindao. We are still waiting for the Mba Hospital to open. We are still waiting for the new CWM maternity unit. We are still waiting for the Lautoka High Court complex. We are still waiting for local government elections. This list is too long for me to complete. Waiting, waiting, and more waiting. I am sure, Mr. Speaker, however polished last night's speech was, the result will be the same again. More waiting, more promises left unfulfilled, and more families left disappointed. Why does the government think that it was so hard to convince the public last year to adhere to their COVID measures? It's because the people do not trust them, and the people can no longer wait to kick them out. Mr. Speaker, I do have to say, however, that the NFP supports 3 policies in the revised budget, only because if you look at the revised budget closely, it's merely a repackaging of what the NFP has been saying all along. When we said we were going to introduce a decent living wage, the government said we can't afford it. When we wanted to have 23 basic items VAT exempted, the government, through its former FRCS board chairperson, Mr. Qereqeretabua, said it will not benefit any Fijians, and that its implementation would be chaotic. Just 3 months ago, Mr. Speaker, when we wanted a removal of the 20-cent fuel tax, way before the price of crude oil increased due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Attorney General is on record saying the idea was stupendously stupid. Yes. How bitter must it be for the Attorney General to eat his own words, stupendously stupid. But let's put Fiji First aside for a second, and I want to address the Fiji people directly. You are what makes this nation great. In times of need and trouble, we showed that we could come together, regardless of what shenanigans the government was up to help our fellow Fijians in need. Fijians overseas, through remittances, kept this nation afloat. Fijian health workers braved weather and long-distance travel to get us vaccinated. Civil society organizations, including FRIEND and the District Council of Social Services all over the country and other NGOs, took the lead in helping fellow Fijians. Fijian bus drivers, road workers, security guards, and everyone else, all of you gave your hands and your hearts to keep this nation going. All the credit should belong to you, not to the politicians in this parliament. It is your courage, your determination, and your sacrifices that should not go to waste. This pandemic recovery is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reassess the status quo and rebalance the scales. This should be our opportunity to launch ourselves on the trajectory to a more sustainable, more green, more fair, and more secure future for all of us. A future we can be proud to bequeath to our children. And that future begins with education. NFP has already announced that it will continue ensuring that education remains free all the way through to year 13. But free education does not mean quality education. To that end, we have made it our policy to establish an education commission to conduct a full-scale review of our education system. We want to know if our students are getting the best education they need to prepare them for the challenges facing the 21st century. This will be done within the first month of an NFP government. We will consider the Commission's recommendations seriously and consult all stakeholders, teachers, parents, and students themselves to bring the recommendations into full effect. Second, for those of us who cannot afford to jet overseas every time we need quality medical care, our only choice is to rely on our health system at home. For many of us, that is a death sentence. This is not the fault of the hardworking nurses and doctors who are doing their very best with what little they have. The fact is that proper investment and oversight in the health system has been lacking over the last few years. This will have to change. We will be conducting a full-scale inquiry into the wastage and inefficiencies plaguing the health system. We will consult experts, and we will hold those who have contributed to the deterioration of our health system to account. Our people deserve better. Under an NFP government, hard-working Fijians will get what they deserve. Thirdly, of course, is our economy, Mr. Speaker. The NFP leader has made it clear many times in Parliament that at least $3 billion have been lost between 2015 and 2020, stolen out of the hands of everyday hard-working Fijians through wastage, pilferage, mismanagement, and corruption. We will be lodging a full-scale inquiry into all instances of corruption, shady dealings, under-the-table handshakes, and the rest. Let me be clear to you, whether you are in government or out of it, if you have been involved in corruption, we will come down hard on you. You will not escape. The long arm of the law will follow you wherever you may try to hide. Back to the Fiji First government, Mr. Speaker. It is clear that this is the budget of a government desperately grasping for its last breaths. But there is no doubt nothing will save them now. They are all tired, and the Fijian people are tired of them. The title of the 1978 song, performed by Johnny Mathis and Denise Williams, and I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, you know the song, and you would have probably sung it as well, should have been the title of this revised budget. The song is Too Much, Too Little, Too Late. I conclude, Mr. Speaker. The capital grant to the Water Authority of Fiji was last night cut by a staggering $8 million. This, a few days after the minister responsible was forced to admit that they do not have enough money for upgrade projects. The Fijian people have no reason to trust Fiji First ever again. They can't even keep the water on.